All right, back looking at some more college football schedules for the 2025 season. Up to date of Florida Gators. And man, sometimes when fans complain about things, you're like, hey, quit crying. You're making it up, or you're making a big deal out of nothing, or whatever. I'm telling you, for the Florida fans that, I don't even know if complain is the right word, but for whatever Florida fans that run around saying, well, but our schedule was hard. Boy, they're right. I mean, look, I hate Florida, but holy shit, man. And look, we all knew that the SEC schedules in 2025 were going to be just the inverse of 2024. In other words, you're playing the same teams you played last year. It's just swapped with the home and home. But where the games fall on the schedule was getting mixed up and rearranged again. And of course, that can go a long way towards determining how hard your schedule might be. If you're, in other words, let's say you got 3 or 4 really tough games over the course of a season, right? Well, you'd like to have them spread out, maybe you'd like to play like a nobody before you have to play like a top 10 team or something. Let's just put the schedule up right now, because this is just mind-boggling here. I'm not going to lie. I mean, do I ever feel bad for Florida or Florida fans? No. But this schedule is absolutely brutal again. Now, you remember last year, of course, they had the really tough schedule. It was primarily backloaded. Remember, something like 5 of their last 6 games were against ranked teams or whatever. And then on top of that, they had the Miami game early in the year. Look at this. Okay, now they do start out with a couple of woozies that, they should be able to win. Long Island Sharks and even South Florida, who I guess is a decent group of 5 team, but not even really in the upper echelon of the group of 5, despite what the Alabama fan will try to tell you. Because, of course, South Florida has given Alabama all they can stand over the last couple of years. Bama beat them both times, but just weird games both times, those South Florida and Bama games. But after that, though, that's it. The rest of the schedule is just absolutely brutal. Look at this. Home against Long Island, home against South Florida, and then back-to-back road games at LSU and at Miami. Now, before you start talking about, well, LSU lost this many games and they got these problems, or Miami lost Cam Ward, both of these teams and programs are way better than Florida. At least they have been over the last 3, 4, 5 years, whatever it is. Overall, I'm not, we all know what's happened in the Florida and LSU. I'm just saying in general, these are tough games. At LSU is one of the toughest places to play, not just in the SEC, but in the country. Miami is going to have another really good team. They're loaded with NFL talent. Now, their defense is what it is. Their defense was terrible last year. They beat Miami by 30, or Florida by 30, whatever it was, right? They're going to have a new quarterback, Miami is, but it's an experienced quarterback, and a quarterback that is 2-0 against Florida, Carson Beck, who transferred away from Georgia down to Miami. I'm not here to make predictions on the games. I'll do that later in the offseason, probably May or June. But I'm not even shitting on Florida here. This is to start the first month of the season. You got road games at LSU and at Miami. Then you get a bye week, and it's a good thing, because look at the 2 games after that. Home against Texas, a top 5 team in every ranking you look at. Some people have them 1. A lot of people have them, 2 or 3. On the road at Texas A&M. Now, Texas A&M is not a team that's been great, really, since joining the SEC a dozen years ago or whatever it was. But again, just ask yourself where they're at relative to Florida. And again, it's a road game. That can be a tough place to play. I'm not saying Florida's losing all of these games to LSU, Miami, Texas A&M. They're going to lose some of them, yeah. I'm not here to do a prediction and tell you to lose. That's not the point. Just look at these first 6 games and find me some other team anywhere that plays anything like that. In their first 6 games of the season, they're on the road at LSU, on the road at Miami, home against Texas, and on the road at Texas A&M. That is 3 road games against ranked teams, 1 home game against a top 5 team, in Long Island and South Florida. Absolutely brutal. Then they host Mississippi State. That might be the first game they're favored in outside of those first 2. They'll be favored against Long Island and South Florida. We'll see about the LSU game. I guess maybe Florida might be a slight favorite in that one at home, although I don't know. But I think they'll be an underdog on the road at Miami. I think they'll be an underdog at home against Texas. I think they'll be an underdog on the road at Texas A&M. And then they'll be a favorite at home against Mississippi State, a very winnable game, a game they should win. Then they get their second bye week. And it's not the second half of the season, while not as brutal as the second half of last year, some of those games they played in the second half of the season last year have been moved up here to the front of the season, most notably the Texas and the LSU games. Texas and LSU were in the back half of the schedule last season. So they come off that second bye week, the week before Halloween, and then they host Georgia in the cocktail party. Georgia will be a favorite. Georgia's beat them, I don't know, 4 years in a row now? Something like 7 of the last 8, whatever it is. Georgia will be a favorite. On the road at Kentucky, that's probably a winnable game for Florida. I think Kentucky's headed in the wrong direction. I'm kind of worried for Stoops' longevity as coach there. But anyway, that's a different video for a different day. But then on the road at Ole Miss, that will be a tough game. Now, Ole Miss is a little bit of a mystery to me this year. I like Lane Kiffin. He's proven now 2 or 3 years in a row that he can put a good product on the field, but they lost a lot off of last year's team, and they rely very heavily on the portal. And he's had a lot of success in the portal. If that success continues for the 25 season, I would expect Ole Miss to be another top 15-ish type team in 2025. But a lot of unknown there because of the amount of turnover. But still, that's a difficult game on the road at Ole Miss. Home against Tennessee. Tennessee probably takes a step back this year. I don't know. They lost a lot on defense. They lost Dylan Sampson. I think Nico's going to have to take a massive step forward. But importantly here, Florida gets them at home. And Tennessee under Josh Heupel, I don't know what I'm watching when I watch them play on the road. They're not just worse on the road than they are at home. That's obvious. You can look at the record and see that. How do they lose some of these road games? They're like a totally different team. I don't know what goes on with the psychology of Tennessee when they go on the road, but it's been bad under Josh Heupel. So maybe that's a game Florida can kind of steal late in the season, and then Florida State is trying to dig themselves out of their own grave, and you get them at the end of the year. So the back half of the schedule this year for Florida is much more manageable than the back half of last year's schedule. But still, and again, I hate Florida. But when you hear Florida fans talking about their schedule, and look, I know this is a Florida prediction video, but I'm just going to, just for fun, okay? Just for fun. Now, you see Florida's schedule there, right? Look at Texas' schedule. All right, now, so Florida plays Miami in the non-con. Texas plays Ohio State. So Texas has a tougher game there than Florida does with Miami, but I'm not even talking about the non-con. I'm talking just about the conference schedule. So you saw all those SEC teams Florida had to play. Now look at the Texas schedule. Florida. Oklahoma. Worst season in 20 years last year. Kentucky, not very good. Mississippi State, not very good. Vandy, not very good. They do have to play at Georgia. Texas does. Arkansas, not very good. Texas A&M hasn't done anything in 100 years. I'm not saying Texas has the easiest schedule on the planet. There's some tough games there on the road at Georgia. And really that last 3-game stretch there, Georgia, Arkansas, Texas A&M, could be kind of tricky for Texas. I'm just talking about the overall schedule as a whole. These schedules are night and day difference. Anyway, all right, enough of that. Let's put the Florida schedule back up on the screen. I don't want to get sidetracked and talking about somebody else's schedule. We're supposed to be just sticking to schedule predictions here. But point is, yeah, I hate Florida. And generally speaking, I don't like it when fans complain about mostly pointless things like, oh, well, you had an easy schedule and we had a hard schedule. A lot of times that's BS. In the case of Florida, though, God, I mean, they have gotten a rough draw here last year and this year. Now, the SEC schedules are completely changing for next season after the 25 season. So 26 going forward, right? They're thinking about going to 9 conference games. Who knows? They may even reinstitute divisions or whatever. And they're totally rearranging which teams different people play. So who knows? In 26 and 27, maybe Florida gets a little lighter of a load, right? Maybe instead of having to play LSU, they draw Vandy. Or instead of having to play Texas A&M, maybe they draw Missouri, whatever. And some of these other teams maybe get a little bit more difficult of schedule. But Florida fan has a point when they at least bring up the difficulty of their schedule. Now, my counter argument has always been, and it remains the same, really, even though I do understand the Florida man's sort of gripe with the schedule. The reality is, if you want to be great, you got to beat good teams. I mean, yes, your schedule is more difficult than some other teams in the SEC, but if you want to get where you want to go, you got to be able to beat those teams. Not all of them, but you don't have to beat all of them, especially at 12-team play. Look, these aren't the old days where you got to go 12-0 to make a playoff or whatever, okay? So, yeah, you got a tough schedule. Who gives a shit? Go 10-2 and get in the playoffs. If you're good enough, you'll do it. Now, you aren't good enough. You're not going 10-2. You're not getting into playoffs, and it's not just because you have a hard schedule. You got a ways to go, bud. You got a ways to go, bud, in terms of making the playoff. But, yes, you're right. Schedule is brutal. At LSU, at Miami, at Texas A&M, at Kentucky, and at Ole Miss. Those are your road games. Those are your road games. Don't worry. Your home games, Texas Longhorns, Georgia on a neutral site, Tennessee. You'll beat Long Island. You'll beat South Florida. You'll beat Mississippi State. That's 3. And you'll beat Florida State. I see 4 guaranteed wins on here. No, I'm not predicting Florida goes 4-8, okay? I mean, I'm 80% confident or more that you'll beat those 4 teams: Florida State, Mississippi State, Long Island, and South Florida. I think LSU, best case scenario for Florida, I think, is a toss-up there because it's on the road. At Miami, I think Miami probably wins that one. I think Texas probably beats you at home. At Texas A&M, best case scenario there, toss-up type situation. Georgia, I think Georgia will win. At Kentucky, boy, I know I said 80% threshold. There's probably a 75% chance you win on the road at Kentucky. So I'm tempted to throw Kentucky into the Florida State, Mississippi State category and say, give you that 5th win there. But then at Ole Miss and at Tennessee, I'll throw Kentucky and say, I think worst case scenario, maybe 5 wins. Best case scenario, 8-4, maybe 9-3 if you get a couple of lucky bounces here or there. Maybe. I don't know. But anyway, this is an absolutely brutal schedule. There you go. The 2025 Florida Gators college football schedule. We'll keep it going. I'll have another one out for you tomorrow. I appreciate you watching. Have a good morning.